Roast Battle. I'm your host, Luke Quitz, and today we have with us the one, the only, the comedian with a menacing aura and a heart of gold. It's Helen K. Welcome to the program, Helen.
Thank you for having me. As a white woman in my 30s, I belong in a podcast, so I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, that's like me starting the podcast, a white guy in his midlife here. That's
It
exactly
was
what
meant
the
to
world
be.
needs. More white people talking on microphones. So, for those that don't know, Helen K is a comedian. She is, more importantly than that, an insult comedian. She's not afraid to touch on hard political topics and controversial subjects. So, with that in mind, Helen, what makes you want to hit the hot buttons?
So I suppose you mean just in stand-up in general, not just
Absolutely,
in
yeah.
in
Not
roast.
just insults, but general stand up. Like all your YouTube clips, all of them are so full of that fire. They're edgy. They're kind of
I
shock rock.
suppose I suppose it comes out of a need to be like, special. Like, I want to be unique and like not like the other comedians kind of thing. So I have this kind of innate like resistance to doing kind of popular topics, like dating and whatnot, even though there's absolutely nothing wrong with the topic. You can do any topic in a unique way. Um, but I think probably the topic choice and just generally the joke structure that I use, the thing that I enjoy most about comedy is going on stage and feeling really smart when I say something. It doesn't even matter if the audience laughs. Like if they are able to appreciate my genius, that's good for everybody. But if not, it doesn't matter because as I'm saying it, I know that it's good. And like in my head, I'm like, nice. Shh. Oh my God. No. Sorry, one sec. Apologies.
Oh, it could have been worse.
I mean, it could be a kid, yeah. I hope that answers your question. It's basically I just like to feel like a smartass.
Well, that's it. It's a platform, right? Like you get up there, and it's not about anybody else in that moment. It's about the audience being there for you to hear what you have to say. Like the notorious Big was has in one of his songs a line that says "sold out seats to see Biggie Smalls speak," and that's him kind of talking about that same thing. It's like they're there for him. He earned it. He came up on his own mind.
Yeah, well, the tricky part though is that while you're earning it, you you have to perform well, you have to perform for the audience more than for yourself, I think. Obviously there is a compromise to be reached. Like because obviously comedy doesn't really pay unless you're super, high level. It's not there is no point in doing it if you're not enjoying it. So you should seek a compromise. But um I I've done a lot of thinking on kind of the concept of selfish comedy. And even though I know that like I am inherently selfish with what I want to talk about and the jokes that I want to do, I still obviously want the audience to enjoy themselves, and I'm finding that you have to connect to them, and especially until you earn so much recognition that they will just come and hear you say anything. Like if you're Dave Chappelle, if you're I don't know, kind of at that level of comedy.
It feels like there's a point in recognition as a comedian, or even in the night. Like last night, Dan Wicks battled John and Joda in New York, and there was a point where Dan had the crowd so worked up that he was saying things, just statements, not even jokes, and the crowd was going wild for it.
Yeah, I know John's style, and I think it's somewhat risky, but there is definitely and I'm never the kind of person that's like female comedians this and male comedians that, because I think I don't think of myself as a female comedian, think of myself as a comedian. And however, the one area where I do feel like there is a difference is that male comedians have more of a leeway to be unlikable. In my experience, when you kind of come on stage as a female comedian and you're not like likable or like you're edgy, it can be more of an uphill battle because the audience can perceive it as arrogance rather than confidence and competency, and sometimes the kind of feeling that that creates is them wanting to take you down the peg kind of thing. So it kind of complicates the ability to relate. Um, but yeah, I mean, there is still kind of a limit to which I can and am willing to, I guess, change the way I am.
There's something there though where uh, the audience wants to see those stereotypes, and if you are a performer that breaks stereotypes in major ways and breaks the sort of accepted status quo, the standard format, then there are more bridges to build before you can connect with an audience. I find that in my own work as well. I'm a really deep thinker, and what that means to most people is I talk too long.
Yeah, I do enjoy the sound of my own voice, to be fair, as well. So, and I wish I would like to improve in terms of like public speaking and being more concise, I suppose. But yeah, like because I've gotten feedback, especially I don't know if you do you have gong shows in the US?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I did a lot of those, especially in the first like year and a half of doing stand up. And you know, two two mixed results, like to some success, but also I've had instances where I was like gonged off for well basically kind of nothing. When I finally won one of the gong shows, I still got like two cards. And the judges were like, "Oh, well, we don't know what happened." But I'm like, "Well, it's like it's a likability kind of thing." And once at the same show, I got a feedback from a female comedian, and she said, "I hate saying this as a woman, but you're really hard to like."
Wow.
And then I thought about it, and I realized like, well, none of my jokes are actually offensive. I'm not actually um, kind of talking about any specific group of people in a derogatory way. However, what I also don't do, I don't really do a lot of self-deprecating comedy, which is one of the things that you can do to kind of get on the same level as audience and endear yourself to them if you go on and kind of make a joke with yourself as the butt of it.
Yeah.
So it's been a process, but uh, bringing it actually to Rose Battle specifically, it's been a really steep learning curve, especially in Rose Battle, because I started doing it like 6 months into doing stand up, and for the first 3 4 months, I was getting really frustrated because I couldn't figure out why the jokes that I know are good are not landing. And I like through kind of my own analysis as well as like feedback from the people that I battled and feedback from the RBL Weekly podcast when they would feature my battles, I realized that a lot of it had to do with my stage presence and that like, I naturally have quite well, obviously, the resting bitch face, fine, but also kind of my body language was like really closed off. I was instinctively standing kind of towards the back of the stage. I was like blocking myself with a mic stand, with the notes, and on and like then my face kind of like uh, I once did a Rose show. It wasn't the official Rose Battle one, but a very similar premise. In Manchester, there's a big venue. Well, actually, the same venue where the division is now, but this was before we had Rose Battle Manchester. So this was an unnamed Rose show, but the same venue. And I won my battle, uh, clean sweep. And then I was in a bar, and there were two girls from the audience, and they said, "We were rooting for you, but it was such a hard watch." And I was like, "Why?" And they said, "You looked offended." And I've never been like offended at a roast battle. But when they said that, and then when I watched the footage back, I realized like, yeah, it's because when I'm thinking about like a comeback or my next joke, I have a really like feral thinking face. I'm like, like, and I've always enjoyed doing comedy, doing roast battle, but it's not always been visible on my face. So now I try to make more of a conscious effort to show that, and it helps in regular stand-up as well. Like eye contact with the audience, more like open body language. I unironically watch like videos on body language and stuff to improve on that, but it matters even more for roast battle because if the audience gets a vibe that you are not into it, it gets really awkward because then it's just people insulting each other, and you need to show that you're having fun.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being a heel up there on stage, but in roast battle, it's like if the crowd sees that you're on your heels and trying to save face, then you've lost already, is what it feels like to me.
I've never had like mm, I've never been in a situation where I'm like, oh, I have to save face. It was more that my main issue that I had to overcome, and still arguably like this is still an ongoing concern, is that uh, I look too, I naturally look very pissed off and aggressive, and that can create, um, well, that can potentially prevent the audience from laughing at my jokes because they just don't want to do it because they think I'm a genuine mean asshole, or um, for example, if the opponent is that way, or I've had this twice when I battled somebody with a very similar energy as me, uh, where we both, when like my opponent and myself were like also like female and low energy, the vibe from the audience was like really weird because they seem to kind of like not believe that it is fun and games. They're like, "Ooh, that I think they're being like they really mean it. They're being really bitchy." When obviously that's not the case. So I think that the kind of the energy, the delivery, the stage presence, that's been my main focus and like my main area that I need to improve still. And but it also helped with actually not caring about the outcome of a battle. I genuinely don't care about how the judges vote. Um, I mean, they are entitled to their incorrect opinion, because all I care about is whether my jokes land and that like I maintain like uh, an acceptable body language. Because I've had an experience, particularly like once. It was my first ever tournament in London, and uh, the audience just kind of hated me from the top. And they just didn't laugh at anything I was gonna say, even though the jokes that I did, I still stand 100%. They were bangers. And I've seen that happen to other people. Like the first event I went to Barcelona for, it was London versus Barcelona. Right after Barcelona became a division, it was four of us from London versus four Barcelona battlers, and it was a battle between Ken Grinnell and the then champion called Marnie something. Haven't seen her since, but it was I saw Ken be in the exact same situation where they just didn't like him from the top, and there was nothing he was gonna say to change that. And that sucks because like you're just like on stage for 5 to 6 minutes, knowing that like, oh, it's not my jokes. They hate me. It's really unpleasant. Yeah, sorry, I kind of went on a rant there.
No, it's all right. It's a tough one when, especially when your opponent they love and they've decided that you're the object of hate for the that you're on stage.
That's a good point because in I think in Rose Battle, as probably in wrestling, I presume, never watched it, um, that when you start off, somebody quickly is in the underdog position and somebody is in the villain position, a lot of the time at least. For example, like if you and I battled, you would start off in the villain position because you're a man. If for example, if a battle, let's say Shalaka Karup, who's a person of color, and one of the few people who's shorter than me, I'm in the villain position. But I've also ended up in the villain position a lot of other times. For example, and I remember it was Pat and Sarah watching my battle against the Ukrainian guy, and for obvious reasons, I started off in the villain position very quickly,
Yeah.
even though he was like a white guy taller than me, etc. But so I'm kind of like I'm very used to ending up in the villain position. So I I kind of try to anticipate that and ideally think of ways to combat that. So I recently battled in Austin, so I believe you've seen that show.
Oh yeah.
And so I was going against Angie Stroud, and uh, when I spoke to her on a call like a couple weeks before, I told her that like I am concerned about our energies because we're both generally quite deadpan and low energy, and because I've in the past I had one very good, very successful battle against Sri Lanka. I also had two battles that completely bombed, where I was against another deadpan Shinokami. Um, not and you didn't share my concerns, but I I deliberately tried to focus on being slightly more upbeat and like open in my body language than I normally would. Um, because not because like as an advantage against Angie, but to create a bit more contrast for the audience between the two battlers. Because if it's the same energy, it can be um, it's more enjoyable if there's a bit of a variety in there.
Well,
So I will play it up if I know I'm going against a low energy opponent.
that touches on an interesting point too, and comes back to what we were talking about earlier, where the audience expects familiar tropes and familiar stereotypes, and if you aren't that, then there needs to be a cue for them to let them know it's okay almost to like you.
Yeah. I've also had to consider that my natural tendency is overcomplicating jokes. Um, and but in general, kind of my eternal struggle with writing for roast battle is what I think is good, what I know is good, because I'm like confident to the point of delusion in my writing ability. Right? It's not necessarily what's going to hit the hardest, uh, for multiple reasons. It down to just the vibe of the room. Sometimes like sometimes you get an audience that is like is very against anything edgy, or specifically, let's say, like a dead parent topic. And if you do a joke about that, they're like, "Oh no, that's too far." So it can be situational, but also, um, I think this is best practice. I don't always do it because I have no concept of time and suck at time management. And I'm always running late and short. Cut it short to the show, but you should say your jokes out loud before you go on stage and perform them, because that helps you identify if something is a mouthful, you're likely to stumble, and sometimes like it's the inflection, the intonation, the word order that makes or breaks a joke.
Absolutely, yeah. Sometimes struggle with that in my own writing, where I've got more ideas than I can fit in the amount of words that work. You know, um, I
Yeah,
always have to simplify what I'm doing and try and think, how can I say this in the most relatable way. But even when you get there, when you, as you say those things out loud, say those jokes out loud, sometimes you find that there is an extra word, or that the th sound that one word ends with, maybe a th word shouldn't follow that.
yeah, and there is also like this phenomenon that some words just sound funnier than others. I mean, there is a bit more science like beyond that. I think specifically, like I think like S sounds are like funnier than like P sounds or something like that. I'm not sure. Um, I generally kind of go off instinct. For example, my first ever battle, I wanted to do a joke that used my opponent's zodiac sign, and he was a Pisces, and Pisces is not a funny word. But you know what's funny? Capricorn. I don't know why. saying this guy is a Capricorn is funnier than this guy is a Pisces. Even though that's obviously not the punchline, it's just like the setup. Um, it, a lot of it is like just intuitive because the Capricorn is kind of a silly word.
Yeah,
I think it's probably the C and the P and stuff, but
but you've
he was
almost
he
got
was
to.
actually very pissed off at me. He was like, "You lied." I was like, "Dude, it doesn't matter."
It's funny. There are a lot of little things that can go into that strategy. Like saying it out loud helps, but there are a lot of very expert linguistic level things that you can incorporate in there, like where
Mm,
a word sounds better repeated. Um,
mm.
like he was in the car, the car, and it doesn't
There
hit
is, yeah,
until that second one. You know.
there is a lot of nuance, which is, I think, one of the reasons why I enjoy Rose Battle so much is that it. So when I initially did Rose Battle, I didn't want to do it. It wasn't my idea. It was my friend's idea, and I was reluctant. I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I like taking the piss, but I'm not like a mean person. Generally, I'm a very nice person, actually. Like, I'm the best person, some would say. But uh, then he kind of sold me like, well, you get to perform, this club and stuff. I was like, okay, fine. And when I was preparing for my first battle, I started watching the podcast, and I quickly realized, like, oh, it's not about being the biggest asshole in the room. It's just a joke writing exercise.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of really enjoyable nuance that, I'm still working out, and I think the enjoyment is in working it out, where it's not necessarily even, uh, a best, like, best written joke in terms of just, the words you use and the meaning and stuff. It can just be something just sounds really funny and sounds really silly. Or like you just said, like the repetition, or like it just in the way you say things, it it, it can really make a joke kill. And um and I wouldn't say that, the jokes that land because, oh, they're so ridiculous that it's funny, or just because of the way you say things. I don't think they're inferior to just a very cleverly written joke. I think it's just another way of playing the same game.
Yeah, I love that about this format, that there's no one way to approach it. Like if you become a comedian that decides there is only one way to approach it and spend all your time trying to figure out the current meta, by the time you have a set full of what you think is the current meta, it's already passed. Like in 2024, we heard a lot of you look like this celebrity from Timu, you look like this celebrity from Wish, Build a
Yep.
Bear, Bucky's, all these sorts of things. That was the meta. But now when people tell a Build a Bear joke or an Ozempic joke, any of these things, it's been done. It's old hat, and it sort of, to me at least, comes off a little bit hackish. Like you didn't have in a writer's showcase the originality to come up with your own shit. You went for the lowest hanging fruit. And to me, Roast Battle is like Fight Club for writers. You know,
Yeah.
like you show up with your wits and your feet and your heartbeat, and that's what you've got. Like pick up the mic and go. So it frustrates me a lot of the time when I see people sort of jumping on those low hanging fruits. Like it must hurt so much to be in the middle of a battle and just have someone hit you with, you look like this celebrity on Ozempic, and the whole room goes nuts with a standing ovation. Like,
That in itself doesn't bother me because I am very aware that it's not the audience's job to know the meta and how many times a joke has been done before. Maybe it's the first time they've been at a roast battle and they've never heard somebody say you look like the pedophile and the child they molested, and they think that's the funniest thing in the world. That's fine. Where I lose my shit internally is on the occasion where the people judging also don't realize that, and they compliment such a joke. It's like it's your job to know that this is hacky. To be fair, it can be original. It can be an approach. Obviously, that sounds like something that would get old very quickly if he repeats it in further battles. But also, you run the risk of saying something that's very localized. And if you're in front of an American audience or an international audience, it just might not land. And yeah, I was at the last, I think, Patreon event judging, and I think a couple people ran into that issue where the references that they made were just a bit too specific to kind of where they are located. And because something important to understand, it's not even that the audience won't understand the reference, it's just that they won't have as much of an built connection to the reference. For example,
Yeah.
like you referenced, like being a heel or heel turn. I am familiar with the reference somewhat. Or, for example, I battled Holly Johnson, who was at the time Lost in Champion, in London. And one of the jokes she did against me, she called me a Raggedy Ann doll. And that joke didn't land. And I think it's not because of the audience and like myself, we don't know what that is. Like I kind of know roughly what it is, but we don't have that connection and recognition of the reference. And that's why like we're not going to laugh because a lot of laughter comes from recognition, like a
Yeah.
surprise recognition.
It's interesting, especially now with Roast Battle League happening on a global scale. Like, it even last year, a lot of it felt very local, like people having jokes about the grocery store down the street from them and what it's called and things like that. But now with 2025 and the addition of the 12 more teams, excuse me, we're on the international playing field. So the format has, well, not just the format, the meta, as we were talking about, has evolved. You can't hit someone with the local jokes as well. They still connect, but not to as many people because there are people in, I don't even know how many countries now with divisions. Um,
Especially if your goal when you're battling at your local division, if your goal and hope is to be featured on the podcast, you need to consider that the people watching the battle will be Americans and they won't get the references. Um, so I kind of try to reduce like the number of references I make to something that's UK specific. I don't ditch them completely, but I am conscious of that when I write. Um, so yeah, I would say my advice would be to ignore the meta. Like, nope, I don't think it's useful to try and figure out what the meta is. If you just realize that, oh, I've been hearing a lot of this specific joke lately, um, I'd say either avoid it or double down on it. So, for example, you can start a joke with like you look like celebrity from wish.com, but then you have to have a punchline that subverts the expectation, like builds on that and takes it to an unexpected direction. So basically either completely ignore it or kind of make fun of the meta. But obviously you have to be conscious that if you make a joke that's kind of niche, like a comedian's joke for comedians, that references the meta and like, or some kind of like kind of an inside joke within your division or even within the league, that's not a good idea because at the end of the day, like you are there performing for the audience that's there, and they obviously kind of, even if it lands, like it's not, it's slightly disrespectful, I would say, to go on stage and do a joke that references like something that's that everybody that is participant in the league, for example, knows, but the audience, like the civilians wouldn't. I think that's a bit exclusionary.
yeah, it's sort of a dirty pool in my mind a little bit, where it's disappointing. It's disappointing when I'm hyped for a battle. I'm expecting both battlers to come with their A game, and we get the current meta basically without any tags on it. It's like you're saying, yeah. There's nothing wrong with being aware of the current meta and hitting those things that are going to be home runs to anybody that's not aware that they've been around for a while. But you do have to tag them up. Like, you look like this celebrity from Wish if all they ate was spaghetti or something like that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you've got to hit it with that next level.
yeah, exactly. And my advice would be, don't worry about your opponent. Like what they do, that's their problem. What you can control is what you bring, and also obviously, how you deliver it, how you respond to your opponent. So even if if they're saying the most overdone, unfunny shit you've ever heard in your life, still do a little like, yeah,
Yeah.
because there is, you don't serve anybody, including yourself, if you just stand there like stone faced or roll your eyes. Or the worst thing you can do, and I've seen like some of the best battlers not able to resist. The worst thing you can do is be like, yeah, I've heard this one before. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
don't say that. Nobody gives a shit. Just roll with it,
Or correcting
even if you've
people is
heard it
another
before.
big one. Oh my god, that drives me crazy. It breaks immersion so much when someone tells a joke about somebody and then their opponent goes, "Actually," and it
It better be funny. It better be funny if they do that.
exactly, exactly.
For example, I've gotten a ton of jokes about Chernobyl, as a Russian, which, however, Chernobyl is in Ukraine, and obviously something that I can say in that I can say, well, Chernobyl is in Ukraine, go now, something like that, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but if I just say it's actually in Ukraine, like, okay,
There's a tactful way to do it without, to use a basketball term, digging in and setting a pick. But you build a wall when you do that. That yes, it can be a strategy that sort of heel rocks your opponent and makes them stop thinking about their next move and about that just happened. But it's not fair in my mind, to get back to what you're saying, to the audience. Like, yes, the writing is for you, the performance is for them. I find a lot of people that come first from stand-up comedy, because we're seeing people that are exclusively roast battlers now. But if a comic comes into roast battle, a lot of time they don't understand that when they're up there, it's no longer just their stage like they're used to when they're doing stand-up comedy. They're sharing that performance with not just their opponent, but with the judges as well. And everyone is sort of yes-anding the battle into being entertaining for the audience at the same time
ideally,
in real time.
ideally, yes.
Yeah, ideally. And you can see when it goes wrong. Like, London, sometimes you see them there just standing with a notebook closed off with their body language and not making eye contact with their opponent. Just like, right, audience? Right? Did I get it right? Which is off putting when you're looking for the roast battle feel in a performance.
That's why I stopped using a notebook. It was actually after my battle against Drew Stern was featured on the podcast. It was I remember that they were in Tokyo at that time, so they were like reviewing it and playing, I think, the battle on the big screen. And when they were reviewing it, they commented that the vibe was weird, even though it was a really good battle. And then the week afterwards, Pat was like, I learned that Drew Stern lost that battle. I couldn't believe it. And I was like, all right, buddy. But when I was watching it, I realized what they were talking about. I had a notebook and I was kind of like, when you have something in your hand, it's naturally just kind of like, you're going to be looking at it even if you don't need it.
Yeah.
So now I, if I bring anything on stage, I have like little flashcards, and most of the time I just have maybe like a keyword on there. Um, because like my issue is that I store a lot of information just in my brain, and sometimes it's just a straight like brain to mouth download, um, which is not a flex. This is more of a like it's a weakness of my lack of time management and stuff. I wouldn't suggest that anybody does that. I suggest rehearsing your jokes as you would say them on stage. But also, I tend to lose track of the number of jokes, and sometimes I essentially end up forgetting to do a joke that I've written. So actually, that happened in Austin, where I did a comeback, and I did it basically as my turn. So I never actually ended up doing my last joke because I miscounted. Um, I mean, that's completely on me, but it's so I think yeah, this is definitely like a London thing in casual battles. Because also you got to remember that until like a year ago, London week battles were weekly, so it was kind of way more casual and like way easier to kind of sign up for. Now, the moment they're monthly, which is also why London, dominated the rankings in the first season, and then we didn't make it to the tournament in the second season because we just don't have as many events. But yeah, I think that habit of like having notes on stage, like the phone or the notebook, it kind of um, remained from the days when it was weekly and everybody kind of like was a bit more relaxed with it. Uh, but yeah, I deliberately made a switch to like flashcards or like keywords, whatever, because I saw myself getting like, being blocked off with the notebook. And I just can't afford that on top of my already limited like ability.
It's interesting. There, I don't think is one specific right and absolute way to do anything. And I think that there is a way, just as much as I see it, I mean, more often than not, I see it not working with a notebook or with New York, especially, it's the phones. Um,
Hmm.
there's a way to do that that works. You can, Scotland's really good for it. They're aware of the rest of the stage and the audience, and they display it in their body language. And even the way they're holding their notebook a lot of the time, they're using it as a prop with body language. It doesn't just stay stationary, clutched in their hand. Uh, or Jay Yamaki, for instance, he always has that fucking drink in his hand, but like it's a part of his costume almost at this point, and so there is a way to do it.
You need to be deliberate with it. That's the trick.
Yeah.
Because if you just, because again, this is something that I would do initially, and something like I'm naturally prone to, so I try to avoid it. If you just focus on the writing and then you leave the delivery and the stage presence to, however it comes out of your mouth and like to kind of like default to whatever feels natural, that's most likely not going to be the best you can do. Because again, like if you have a notebook, instinctually you will end up looking at it even if you don't need it. Or if yeah, closing yourself off. So that's something that you do naturally if you, I guess, lack confidence in some shape or form, or I'm generally kind of quite a, I would say, introverted person, and um, I guess like when I'm thinking, especially like I I go kind of in a tunnel vision mode where like I just focus like on the task at hand and I ignore everything else. So I think that contributes to like if I have anything to like close myself with and block myself off with, I will do it. Which is why like it's I know it's best for me to eliminate the risk.
I have this uncle, and he was in a few motorcycle accidents, and he has he. I think he developed this saying because I haven't heard it anywhere else. It's sort of like a Rickyism from Trailer Park Boys, if you've ever heard of that show. He says there are two kinds of people in this world. Some of them are the horse, and some of them are the driver.
Mhm.
So the horse, all it knows how to do is run. It's not thinking about the next turn. It's not thinking about where it needs to go, steering the wagon, or any of that. its job is being a horse and running. I'm the driver. I wish I could be a horse sometimes. You know, like it seems like an a charmed path almost to be able to just, you know, exist in the moment without having to build those bridges with an audience. A good example of that is someone like, and he's incredibly smart, but on stage he comes off like he's a comedian and that's what he does and that's what he's there to do. No bones about it. He's a comedian. Dakota Fry from Roast Battle Bay Area. Big guy,
Mm.
Jewish guy, always has the yarmulke on and his windbreaker on stage. But when he gets up there, it's like he could be standing outside the club and having that same roast battle. Like you just sort of see that he's there in the moment and very hard to take out of the moment. Whereas with me and with I think more active forward thinkers in general, I'm not saying he's not. He just has such a fucking great onstage presence that I would never know. There's there's a tendency to slip out of the moment. Like,
Mm.
oh, that one against me hit really hard. What can I do to rebut that that's going to slam even harder than that pop that they got? And like I see that in performers' faces, like you mentioned in a couple of your battles. In John Ajoda's battles, he does it hard a lot of the time. Where if he has a really good joke and he knows it was a really good joke, but then his opponent gets a bigger pop right after, you see him just disappear. Um, and it's not just him; it's a lot of battlers that take pride in their work. You can see that people really care about their writing and showcasing it, and that I think sometimes the audience can see as a little bit arrogant or hard nosed because
Because it is. Because it is. Because it's your ego. Because if you just care, if you genuinely just care about your writing and showcasing it, then you shouldn't care about your opponent getting a bigger pop of something else. Don't worry about what they are doing and what pop they are getting. And if you can't think of a rebuttal, don't do one. So that's a mistake that a lot of especially like new battlers make. I made it, still occasionally make it, is you feel like you need to rebuttal everything. But if you don't have a rebuttal that is really good, just don't do it. It's not worth it. And but I think for me, because like I identified my main issue as I guess connecting to the audience and showing that I'm having fun and helping my jokes land, that allows me to ignore more or less. I don't really care about my opponent and like what they do. Obviously, like I'll listen to their jokes, I'll laugh at them, I'll do a rebuttal if I can think of one, right? But I I don't care if they say what they say and what kind of laugh they get. In fact, I want their jokes to land too, because if you are killing it and your opponent bombs, it's also not an enjoyable battle overall. And I also don't care what the judges say afterwards, because I know that like my jokes landed, I killed it. It doesn't really matter. And it's the ego that gets bruised in those situations. And the worst thing you can do is to allow your face to show that you're getting bothered in the moment.
yeah, rule one in my mind is don't take it personally, which is a crucible. That is not something that you're just born knowing how to do. You've got to develop that skill. It's like building calluses on your hands from using the tools more and more, or knowing what armor to wear for the fight you're going into. Uh, there's a huge empathy component in roast battle, and when it's not there, that's when I sort of see people leaving the moment. Like everyone's in their own little compartment and the audience is 5 miles away from all of it. um, To me, the battle isn't over until the judging's over and the performers have left the stage. So that's maybe a difference where I feel like the judging is a part of the performance where as long as the battlers are in the middle of the main stage, they are the focus. So that's interesting to me that you don't care what the judges say or about that component of the performance as much as I guess the meat and potatoes of the performance, the joke writing.
Well, when I say I don't care, is that nothing they can say can upset me to the point where I'm gonna look pissed off.
Okay.
Um, I obviously like I am conscious of what they're saying, and then like I'll laugh at their jokes, I'll nod. If they vote for my opponent, like I do a clap. Um, so like I am still like performing, but um, it genuinely doesn't matter to me if my opponent gets like a huge laugh on a hacky joke or the judges, say something that I don't agree with, like they compliment a hacky joke or they vote for my opponent. That doesn't matter. My job is to sell the jokes that I've written and also, be part of the performances and like engage with my opponent's jokes, laugh, nod, etc. And the same with the judges. It's just like nothing that they can say can make me, you know, upset. If I need to be upset, I can be upset later. But um, you do see it with some battlers that they can't help but betray it on the
Yeah.
face. When something like that happens, like what you said, like if you get a hockey joke done against you and it gets a pop, but also when they feel like they're losing the battle, you can just occasionally see that kind of a panic mode sets in or the anger sets in. And at that point, you've lost because as soon as you stop having fun, the audience can feel it. And then it doesn't matter even if you like come out of the gate with the best joke ever, like just the shift in the atmosphere, you've lost it if um you just have to you just have to find a way to be having fun on stage. And for me, that's like I'm very laser focused on my jokes landing.
Well, thanks for unpacking that. It makes a lot more sense to me that is the reaction. You are still a performer as long as you're on that stage.
Absolutely. And the judging is an important part of it. I had a an altercation with the judges at an event that shall not be named for now, but um, it was a show that had a break after the initial two battles and then two more battles. And the first two battles, one of which was mine, the other one obviously wasn't. The judge for both of those, the judges were basically they just picked up the mic, was like, nah, that was kind of shit. And then in the break, I I laid into them. It was like, why the fuck would anyone come back? Like you're
Yeah.
also there to do a job. You should also help sell the battles. You can shit talk the battlers in a funny way, but like, why are you telling the audience that this is shit? Especially because those battles weren't really shit. But um, I was really really pissed off because like um, that those people like weren't there performing. They weren't thinking of the show. They weren't thinking of the audience. And well, that's not what you're there for. You're not there to sit and just like say whatever. You are performing. And to be fair, like
Yeah. Yeah.
it very much improved in the second half of that show. But yeah, I've had that interaction.
Well, good on you for speaking up because the judges, although they are seated in a separate area, are a part of the same performance. And I'm a very passionate guy with all this stuff, with all my hobbies. I'm in love with them, and that's why I'm doing them. So when judges don't come correct and remember that they too are a part of the show, it can be so frustrating. They're standing up in the middle of another judge's speech and walking
Mhm.
away to get a drink or use the bathroom or do their next line or whatever it happens to be. Or as you say, putting down the performance that they themselves are a part of.
Exactly, because and you need to understand that like even if you think like, okay, like the first battle was shit, let's say, right? You need to realize like, okay, for the for the betterment of the whole show, you probably at least shouldn't say that it was shit. You and maybe even you're like, wasn't that a great way to start the show, guys? And you raise the energy. It's it's basics. Um,
No, you can hate them all you want to, but compliment them first. The whole thing, according to Roastmaster General Jeff Ross, is that we roast the ones we love.
I feel you, and obviously I get frustrated with that kind of stuff too, because obviously, you know, I was frustrated, being on stage and hearing like, that event and this being the judges like, oh, that was shit. But obviously, like when you are on stage, you can't let that show on your face. And obviously, then when I was watching the second battle and heard the same feedback to them, I was like ready to throw hands. Obviously, I'm not on stage anymore. I can look as pissed off as I want. When I say like don't worry about that, is in when you are on stage, only focus on your performance and your reaction, the way you react to bullshit is also part of your performance, and you need to be prepared for that and not let it affect you when you're on stage. You can be pissed off later.
Yeah, the only reaction should be something that moves the event forward and builds the hype, builds the momentum. Or at least that's what it's starting to feel like to me. I've watched a few battlers, popular battlers even, that are well into this journey, that have roast battled for years, that still forget that they don't need to take it personally up there.
It's the ego. It's the ego.
Yeah.
And it's even like, yeah, even some of the best battlers, um you see like them struggle with that. Um and I think it's important to, I guess, reflect on your weak points. I would say, just in terms of stand up in general, you always start off with one thing stronger than the other, either writing or stage presence, delivery, and performance. And it's your responsibility to improve the part that's lacking. So for me, for example, I've always been like strong in the writing and naturally kind of weak in the delivery and performance, which is not like, that's my focus. And it's, one sec. Just dropped my earphone. Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. You need to kind of assess your weaknesses. So, for example, if your weakness is you can't handle, you know, when the battle shifts in your opponent's favor, or they do a hacky joke, you need to be mentally prepared for that, and if necessary, act like it doesn't bother you.
That's it.
You can't just you can't just be like defaulting to your natural state, because you know that that's your weakness, because it's not gonna just you can't just wing it, because by winging it you're probably gonna display that you're pissed off. So you need to be conscious of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see that as a style sometimes with battlers where, as a strategy, they try and get under your skin and take you out of the moment to allow themselves more room to work on stage so that you're not a threat anymore while they're up there. Like, what's a good example of that? Sort of attacking someone's credibility, let's say.
I feel like, again, like that kind of is that's the kind of joke that is a bit too behind the scenes focused. And also, like, who does it serve, right? Like, okay, yeah, maybe, best case scenario, you're going to, you know, disorient your opponent and, throw them off their game. Why would you want that? Because then the whole battle is not going to be as good as it would be otherwise. Like, what's the point of doing that? And is it the funniest joke that you could do? Probably not.
Yeah, to me, it comes off a lot of the time as dick wagging. Like,
Yeah,
male and female comics, but non-binary comics are all guilty of it. It's sort of like showboating in a way, making it all about you and not about sharing the stage. Where the best battles that I've seen, you brought up Shalaka Corrupt, her and you had a great battle with each other that was back and forth, back and forth. She allowed you to say your jokes. You allowed her to say hers. She's actually a very good battler for that. Her battle against Jack Trainer, same thing, where they're laughing at each other's jokes on stage. You guys are having fun up there. You're showing it. And you're putting on a show not for yourselves, but for the audience, right? Like ego is a big word, and that toxic ego component ruins battles quickly.
Yeah, and also, um, I think, for example, like Shalaka and myself, I think it's because we both have, the love of the game. Um, it doesn't, I think that's why also, like, yeah, you laugh at each other's jokes not because you have to for the performance, right? But because you're just enjoying the battle as it's happening. And that's why, like, you know, if your opponent does well, like that doesn't throw you because you're confident in your own jokes. And also, like, it makes the battle more fun because you want the whole battle to land. And the reason why it looks like we're having fun is because we are.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, if you're somebody whose enjoyment of the battle depends on how well you're doing, then you should possibly reconsider the reasons for like why you're doing Rose Battle at all.
Well
Because
said.
if you're not enjoying the whole of it, the writing process, the performance, getting to hear the jokes that your opponent does, and playing the game like, ooh, can I come up with something like clever to say for that or not? If you don't enjoy the whole of that process, if you only enjoy it if you do well, I don't think this is I don't think this is like a good endeavor for you long term.
You really can tell when people are up there having fun, and that is what I like. It's out of love, not out of ego. I One of my favorite things about this is that it's the best therapy that a performer can get in a lot of ways, where how would you know you look like that if that opponent didn't tell you, if that judge didn't tell you, or if you didn't even consider yourself in that way in trying to write a self-deprecating joke.
Yeah, and that's
To
actually
me,
interesting because I know multiple battlers that end up asking their opponent if they can use the jokes done against them in their set. And a lot of the time people say yes because um I'm never gonna use it. For example, another battle that was featured on the podcast, it was my battle against Emmerich BJ. So that was his first ever battle. And I think it was number one for that week. I'm not sure. But it it was his first ever battle, but he was such a great sport about it. He was laughing, he was enjoying it. And after the battle, I think he asked about one of my jokes, and then I gave him another joke that I wrote, but I didn't do on stage. Because like Emmerich is well, I think he uses he they pronouns, so he's non-binary, and um God, I forgot I forget exactly what joke it was, but it was kind of around that. And I gave it to them because, well, I'm not gonna use it. Like I have no use for the joke, but he later told me that he used it in his set and it went down really well, and like that also obviously makes me very happy.
that's beautiful. I love the community building aspect of it too. Like it brings people closer together, it builds bridges more than it burns them, which is a strange thing for people standing up there and firing insults at each other like we do. But it's positive. It's to me in a way a little bit punk rock. Like I grew up as a punk rocker, so we used to insult each other as a way of saying we love each other, and that's parallel to roasting the ones you love. Like instead of saying hey man I love you, we'd go fuck you and roll our middle finger around on someone's forehead. Like
I
the
mean, I don't stop roasting or making jokes when I'm off stage,
yeah.
which occasionally can get awkward because sometimes, even though we're all comedians, sometimes people don't really understand that and don't expect you to do that. But I just enjoy saying stuff that I find funny, just enjoy saying funny stuff. And, 9 times out of 10, everybody vibes with it. I think in the episode that Brian and Pat recorded after we all met up like in person for the first time in Barcelona for their tournament. Uh, I think Brian even mentioned in the podcast that like, yeah, like she doesn't stop when she's on the stage. We did a lot of jokes with Brian.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love those guys. They're really cool.
I love that. It's community. Like we're showing each other things about each other, and growing as a group. And now it's not just your little clique in the city that you're in anymore. It's everywhere. You can go to LA and be from Japan and have people there tell you things about yourself that people in Japan wouldn't, for instance. So we've grown to that point.
Yeah, and also it's just every battler generally has their own style, and one of the most fun elements of it for me is like trying to, figure out what their style is, and think of how I can work with it. For example, like if somebody is low energy, then I'll try to be slightly high energy than I normally would be, for contrast. Not as a mind game or to look better, but just, as I said, for contrast. Um, but also, how you can potentially counter it. Like, is there like something that they say or do that you can point to the audience and kind of make fun of? So for example, so my all-time um, role model in Rose Battle is Eli Sayers, who hasn't battled for years now. And there's a recording of his battle against Dina Hashem. And Dina Hashem, she's, I think, probably most famous from a viral Rose Battle reel when she did a joke about the other guy and his mom who died in a motorcycle accident. And she said that this guy, she died like this guy lives, an unrecognizable road feature. So it was a battle against between Eli Sayers and Dina Hashem, and Dina is, very kind of subdued, low energy, deadpan. And in one of his early jokes, Eli makes fun of it, and he basically, imitates her. It's like, if you say your jokes like maybe they'll sound funny. He says something to that effect. But it worked really well because by that point the audience already has recognition of her style. But also it slightly disarms it because everything that she said afterwards, people will be remembering what he said about it. So that you can also use it in your favor without it becoming some kind of mind games that serves nobody.
It's interesting too, like when someone leans too hard into being mean to someone who's low energy, it backfires on them so hard so much of the time. A good example of that is when people come at Evelyn Troutman from Chicago. She ruins them. Like every person that battles her makes a Wednesday Adams joke. Every person that battles her makes an eating disorder, a suicide joke, whatever. So she holds that sort of intentional low energy monotone girl vibe through it. There's no rocking her with that anymore. And for battlers to face her unaware of that and try and just be mean, it goes right past her. And I love seeing that too,
Well,
where
because it shouldn't be like rocking your opponent shouldn't be the goal. Your goal should just be um, you should make fun of them, but in a way that's, you're both in on the joke. So you can still do like a joke about her being low energy, but if it's like super funny and the audience loves it, then that's all you can want, really, right?
Yeah, I feel like there aren't any hard rules, but there are guidelines. And one of them that came up talking with Jay yesterday was that it should generally and usually, but not all the time, be more fun than mean. The mean shouldn't outweigh the fun.
Absolutely. And this is a big problem with, I would say, with edgy comedians, is that, and also like, in roast battle, because you have to be insulting people, is it's easy to do the edgy and forget to do the funny.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's like
sometimes shock value works, but that's not a good joke by any standard. Like, you have to make it funny.
yeah, I feel like shock value works best from a writing and performance point of view, either as the setup or as the end of the joke. But if you try and sprinkle edgy throughout the middle of the joke, it loses something in delivery where people are more focused on, oh, this guy's trying to be edgy, this performer's trying to be edgy than the writing in the joke. Like they're more focused on
Well,
the edgy subject than what you're writing it about. Whereas if you start out by saying, hey, I'm going to tell a joke about this edgy thing, then you have cleared the path for yourself to deliver your writing and your wit and the performance.
yeah, one of my favorite jokes that I've done against somebody, it's quite a while ago. It was against a London battler called Ed Mulvey. And I started my jokes that Ed, Ed, um, sorry, she's pretty. I started the joke with Ed's brother is transgender, and obviously everyone in the audience immediately like the butts get clenched, like,
Yeah.
oh, where the fuck are you gonna go with this? And then I say like, so it means he was born a woman, and then had to realize that he was actually a man, and not just under pressure to give his and Ed's parents a son they always wanted. And then that also works because everybody, it's obviously kind of the surprise, but also the relief because you're like, oh, thank fuck, it didn't go somewhere weird.
That's it. Yeah, the mislead has to be there, like where you start out hardcore and then you pat them on the back a little bit, don't worry, it's safe, or you lead them into that feeling of safety and a gentle joke and then you smash them with something edgy at the end. But if there's no misdirect, if it's just you trying to edgelord your way through the next 30 seconds so that you can tell another joke, the audience smells that. The audience can feel it.
Yeah, and also, sometimes like a shock value joke that is like more edgy than funny, it can work. However, you are running a risk with that because if it's essentially my rule is like if you go edgy, the edgier the joke is, the funnier you have to make it. The same with long form joke. If like it's a long journey to the punchline, then the punchline has to be even better. And uh, with edgy jokes, like you run the risk that it will alienate the audience unless the joke is like extremely good. So in that battle that I mentioned in Manchester, that wasn't within the league. My opponent did a joke that he later repeated in a league battle in London, and it completely bombed in London, but it landed really well when he did it against me. And the joke was that Helen can't hold down a relationship. The last thing that was held down was her when she was gang raped.
Fuck.
Obviously, that probably would be fucked up if that was a true story. Obviously, it's not.
Yeah.
Um, it happened to land in that room. They were really up for edgy, and they loved it. Fine, obviously, but then I waited out that laughter, and I said, I knew I recognized you from somewhere, and it killed even like more than that joke. But the point is like when he did that in London, it completely bombed. And because like that's a risky joke because if it's not funny enough to compensate for the edgy, the audience might not get on your side.
I feel like you've got to put out feelers in the room. You've got to read the room until you know that they're ready for that raunchy comedy vibe. If they're
It
not
helps
ready
to
for raunchy comedy, then you're you're a Satanist at a nun convention.
yeah, you have to yeah, and that's why like watching the battles before yours, if you're able to, if there are battles before yours, that's really helpful, like to kind of suss out like what the audience does and does not go for. Even though obviously there is only so much you can pivot with what you've prepared, even but you can kind of alter your delivery slightly, or maybe swap out some jokes if you have some extra at kind of at the last moment. But it definitely helps kind of trying to suss out the vibe. But also the Austin show, which I think you watched, I chose to open with a race joke, which was very
Ooh,
risky.
that was a very risky joke. But the thing about taking that big a risk is that even if it's not necessarily positively that it's remembered, that creates ripples. It gets talked about, it gets clipped, it gets put on podcasts. So if you do it right,
I am very happy with how it went down because um it did land, even though like there was a mixture of sounds, but it did land.
yeah,
And what allowed me to do that joke also was at that specific show there was a bit of an introduction. So you come on stage, you talk to the host, and I did like a silly joke about like, oh, I'm in Texas, I'm ready to be a yee-ho tonight, and I was like a bit silly, kind of try to be like positive. Oh, I'm just gonna have to move inside
no worries.
1 second. But yeah, like I think I would not have done it if it was like a cold open. If it's that Oh shit, okay, I think I gotta pick something up. Sorry, just give me 30 seconds to one
Yeah,
minute.
no
I'll
worries.
be back.
So yeah, if the room is not ready for a raunchy comedian and they walk out into what is called a cold room and they throw a fireball, of course they're going to lose that crowd.
Well, I would also say again that I would say it's worth doing it if the joke is good. And I felt that that joke, even though it was like edgy, it was my favorite of that set that I wrote. And I think that also helped, even though like some people did like ooh, but it still landed because it was a good joke.
Let's talk about the recent edgy joke where someone
Okay.
came out and described their opponent as black but in Russian.
Um, Here's the thing. That's not what she said. She did say the N-word in Russian, which sounds obviously just similar to the N-word in any language. Black in Russian is not that word.
So
She just said the N-word.
that's a beautiful example of dropping a fireball in a cold room.
Here's the thing. I think it's a good example of an edgy joke that misses the funny. It's just not funny. The funny in
Example of
that the funny
the
in that joke was, oh, look at me, I am Russian, I am racist and goofy. That was the funny, which is like just for me personally is not me. But no, like me and like another comedian who's Russian speaking, we were like mortified at that because no, oh, no, you just straight up just called him a slur. And then you just said, "Oh, what? It's just black and Russian." It's like that's not a joke. That's you called him a slur.
yeah, it's rough out there lately. There's sort of a race to the bottom going on. Austin gets it a lot more than other places, Texas, where you can just walk up and without any pageantry at all call someone a gay retard and the room erupts. Like it's a different room than you would get in London. Absolutely.
And that is also something to be conscious of. Um, you know, the likely energy in the room that you're performing to. And for me, that's part of the game. It's part of the exciting elements of it, like working out, ooh, what what are they likely to be like on the night? Obviously, you can't predict it 100% because it still comes down to, you know, just the vibe in the room on the night, specifically on that night, but also like what comes before your battle. Like what was the battle just before yours like? What was the vibe that was created by the host and the judges? And those factors you just cannot account for. But it's still something that I enjoy, like trying to work out what are they likely to like, or more importantly, not like, or in the same vein as we discussed before, what are they likely not to not get?
Anyone can stand up there and tell jokes, but to be a good comedian, you have to be intuitive. You have to know how to read the room and build a bridge with your audience. Or if it's a roast battle, you've got even more work to do, because then it's not just you in the audience. It's you have to build a bridge with the audience, your opponent, those judges, and connect that all into being one performance in that room. Like that, to me, the all-time roast battles are the ones that can connect all that, and the audience doesn't even know it's happening in front of them.
Yeah, I think it's just I treat it like a game, and it's kind of like it's a challenge. Like, ooh, can I figure out what's gonna work for the audience? Can I figure out come back to what I'm hearing from the opponent? Um, and it's fun, and that's why, and I enjoy fun, and that's why like it's easy for me to well, it's always been easy for me to enjoy it. Obviously, I know now that I need to be conscious about displaying that I'm having fun, because like my angry face wasn't ever about actually being angry. It's just when I'm thinking, I just look pressed even though I'm not. But uh it's yeah, and I think being playful with it helps. And even like when I do my regular stand up, obviously I still run into like ability issues sometimes, and I will try and pivot and or like address it. I have several jokes about being unlikable, so if I say something and it doesn't land, then I can pivot and be like, yeah, so I've heard that I am hard to like, and maybe that's true, but maybe you could try a bit harder. And I will try and play the game, being like, all right, let's see what I can do to get them on my side. But but sometimes, you don't succeed, no matter what you do. But but that's fine. And I remember I had this one gig. It was a competition, and I was going last, and yeah, they just didn't vibe with me at all. But at the end of my set, I just took a pause, and then I just said, no audience can convince me that I'm not a genius. And that's true. And I think that's also what helps with me not being like, not getting tilted over, you know, uh, the audience laughing at a hack joke or the judges saying something I don't agree with. Because at the end of the day, like, nobody can say anything that can convince me that my writing is not good. If I know going on stage that what I have is good, nobody can convince me otherwise. Even if it completely doesn't land, I'll still know that it's good. And it's just like there is a compromise that I try to find between like what I enjoy saying and what I know is good versus what the audience is more likely to enjoy. But there is obviously a limit to which I'm going to try and twist myself into a pretzel for the audience. Like I'll do my best, but it's still going to be authentically me, and if
Yeah.
it doesn't, if it doesn't connect, it doesn't connect. That's all right.
That to me, again, talking about what makes a great performer, to me, authenticity is such a big word there. Where if you create a persona that's not based on who you already are to a certain extent or who you are trying to become, if it's something totally left wing, like, holy fuck, Gallagher carrot top level gimmicks,
Hmm.
then the audience sees that as fake right away, more often
Yeah,
than not, and you're working that whole time to prove to them that you're not a tryhard while you're doing all these tryhard things.
but also the thing about gimmicks is that, or like character acts, at least in Rose Battle, is that I feel like obviously if that's, some people can do them really well, and if that's something they enjoy doing, absolutely no issue with that. But I feel like that can be quite limiting because you impose limits on yourself that you then cannot break, and it makes you less flexible, especially in something like Rose Battle, where you benefit from flexibility and thinking on your feet and pivoting based on how, based on your opponent's jokes and how like the situation develops, right? And if you, yeah, then if you choose to go with the gimmick, so for example, if you choose to do like 5 jokes on the same topic, or start them in the same way, or like basically utilize the gimmick, um, or if you're just generally like an alternative comedian, right? So we have a prolific battler in the London scene called Joe Murphy. Another one is Peter Baisley, also in London. So they're both alternative comedians. And what I find with them is that it either really, really works or it really, really doesn't. Because like because again, like you can't really pivot because if the audience is not on board with what you're doing, then there is you can't deviate from that. You're like already invested in the style that you're
You're
doing.
locked in. I don't think there's anything wrong with um, only showing certain parts of yourself on stage as long as everything you do is with intention. You can't half-heartedly become a character. Uh,
It has to be intentional, but it also, I think, it should feel authentic, and it should be in line
yeah.
with who you actually are. So, for example, I was talking to James Regal from Barcelona recently, and and I think we were discussing Joe DeRosa, who was one of the judges at the Austin show,
Oh yeah.
uh, because he gave me his vote, saying, "I'm giving you my vote basically because I'm impressed how well you speak English." And I think that was one of the most offensive things that he's ever said to me. And then for James's battle, he told him that, "Oh, I'm so impressed! Like you came all this way here." And he got like roasted by other judges for that. But so we were discussing that, and James Regal suggested to me like, well, maybe you should play up the Russian accent more, like Mila. So there's a battler in Barcelona called Mila Kapayeva.
Mm-hmm.
So she has a more pronounced Russian accent, which I would say is a bit played up compared to, I guess, how she naturally talks,
She has
but
a
not
very
that much.
character voice.
Yeah, but it really works for her. Like it doesn't feel like she is doing a bit as in like a character or pretending to be something she's not when she does it,
Yeah.
and she utilizes it really, really well with the structure of her jokes. So at that Barcelona London event, she was going against a guy called Adam Green, and it's just the way she delivered the joke was it just worked seamlessly with the way she wrote the joke. And I ended up retelling that joke to Adam's girlfriend later on because the joke was about her. And I retold it kind of in the same manner because you can't like separate the two. And the joke was that, and the way she delivered it was like, Adam has a dog called Hannah and girlfriend called Rosie. Oh no, the other way around. Either way, they both prefer to fuck a toy. And it just works. It just works really well
Yeah.
together. like the but if I were to play up like the Russian accent, it just wouldn't feel authentic. And also like I couldn't then just drop it, you know. So I'm just obviously I have an accent, but that's just I think I'm just gonna go with however I sound, you know.
Uh,
But for for me like that delivery really works. And even though it is played up to how she normally sounds, it's not that much of a deviation. And she's very smart to make use of it
yeah.
and like power her jokes with it rather than that being just like an afterthought or a hindrance. She like turns it into a strength.
Some of the best characters in roast battle comedy, I find that like character roast battlers are the ones that seem like they got made fun of for that thing a lot of their life. So they said, if you think my middle name is Cholo, I'm going to be the biggest cholo you ever saw. Like Lost Digits, putting on the balaclava that says Lost Digits across the top, coming on stage, like looking like a superhero, like a villain or something almost. But like it's an amplified version of all the things that people see in you more than you choosing an identity and saying, I'm going to become that.
Yeah, it has to be authentic basically. It's like
Yeah.
it's not it shouldn't be an effort to put the act on. It's more basically like yeah, playing something up, um, but being yes, deliberate with it. Well, I would say in a way deliberate with it, as in like utilizing it well, but also in a sense not deliberate in terms in regard that like it should come natural. It shouldn't feel like and something that you have to be you know consciously putting on. I think
That's it. Yeah, it
obviously
should
you
already
can do
live in
that,
you.
but it's more difficult to sell it.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, some battlers, some comedians don't even know they're a character until they get on stage. One of them, again on the U.S. side, Bay Area, Subhash Sharma is so much that guy. If you're familiar with him, if you've seen his battles, his style is developed. There was a period I was talking with Josh Means. He was like, I didn't even want to fucking book that guy when he first started. He did one battle, and I said, I'm never booking you again. Like he said that to his face. You're never getting booked on my show again. But then Subas put in the work. He's got a hard Nepalese accent, which
Mhm.
already is very uncommon for people. Like they're not familiar with it on the USA side. But he developed this shtick. He built this super Nepali on top of Subas. And it was all the things that people told him after they saw him perform. So now he's got it nailed. You know, folks, he starts out with his delivery. Like, he's become a super ego version of himself on stage. And that always hits for me. That always hits for me. I love to see it.
Yeah, it's like it sounds like it's the same as what kind of Mila does with the way she like delivers her jokes. Is that
Yeah.
you are conscious of you know who you are, and I wouldn't even say like necessarily your limitations or drawbacks, but just um things that stand out about you. So for example, an accent, right? And step number one is to just take stock of that okay, that's a thing that I have to consider and take into consideration. If it's like if the accent, let's say, like it's strong enough to be you know a non-negligible part of the performance, you have to first recognize it, and second, you utilize it to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we are coming to really is the most important thing is to reflect on, and this goes for stand up as well. Reflect on your performance, no matter how good or how bad was it, and you know, take the parts that really work, and then make an effort to punch up the parts that need improvement. And I think where there is a risk of some comedians and some battlers kind of hitting a ceiling or becoming even like disillusioned with stand up or roast battles is when they are not willing to kind of work on their weaker areas and improve. And that's where you have the ego and being like, why is it this landing? Like, why is my opponent doing better? If you if you focus on yourself and like your performance, and again treat it as a game, and being like, okay, like, well, what isn't working? What do I need to improve? Or like, how can I do it differently to make it better? It's really like the iterative process, but at the same time, I suppose like it doesn't, you should maintain a base level of confidence that shouldn't you shouldn't allow others to shake.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, if you're letting the audience decide who you are and who you are going to become, then exclusively, I should say, to be clear, then you're doing it wrong in my mind. You're up there to improve yourself, not to become something totally different that is easily accepted by an audience.
The way I would phrase it is you should be working with the audience, but not for them.
Yeah, yeah, there's nothing cringier than a pandering comedian sometimes.
Yeah, and it just like it doesn't yield good results,
Mm.
if at all, but definitely not in the long term.
Yeah,
So
if
that,
your goal is to grow as a comedian, then you have to be like you say. It's got to be a team effort. The audience is informing your decisions, but they're not deciding for you.
yeah, because we talked a lot about, performing with the audience in mind and that the show is for the audience. But yeah, I think the best way of thinking about it is that you're working with the audience. So it's kind of like a collaboration, and you're like, okay, well, I bring a certain, skill set, a certain package to the table, and I'm going to work with you, to make it work for all of us. But, I'm not going to obviously completely change who I am or my writing, or my style, just because like that you don't like anything out of what I have to give you. And that's fine. Okay, like, partnership didn't work out, but you're working with them, and so you're like working out, okay, like how can we make the best out of it together? But you're not like working for them, as in like, well, there is gonna be a limit after which you're like, well, it didn't work, it didn't work. Like, was it like Bill Burr and his famous was it Philadelphia rant?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it. It's like, well, he was working with the audience, and that he chose to address, you know, their um their attitude, rather than just bang out his set and leave. So he was in the moment and working with the audience, but he was working for the audience. It's like he's not just going to pretend to be somebody he's not. And he just went off on them, and it worked really well. I think that's it's probably the best way of thinking about it.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't let other people compromise your identity. Um, if you don't have an identity and you're developing one in real time in front of people, that's all fine and good, but you can't, in my mind, the path forward, which is really a main focus in all of this, is growing and moving forward and getting through it. Really, just getting through the hard world that this is. Um, you can't let other people put their hands on your life like they've got a remote control. Yeah, you're on camera, you're on their TV screen, but really, you are the one that decides when you walk off that stage, not them. And if you're leaving it up to them, then I think there should be maybe a reevaluation there as to why you're up there. Maybe comedy isn't the best form of therapy.
Yeah, and I think this applies to, a lot of things, such as, like, for example, heckling. So you sometimes see even like, you know, somewhat recognized comedians basically crumble in the face of a heckler. And that just doesn't happen if you have like a base level of confidence that cannot be shaken no matter what happens in the room. But also if you are in the mindset of working with the audience, because I love hecklers. because that's also like a game to be like, ooh, somebody said something to me. Can I think of something that's funny to say back? And 9 times out of 10, I will. And if I don't, if I say like whatever and it doesn't work, like, well, I try to play the game, right? But I'm not gonna get upset at somebody saying something to me because again, there is nothing they can say to convince me that my jokes are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the confidence that it takes to go out there and face that crowd. At the same time, to counterpoint and play devil's advocate, a little humility can go a long way on that stage. And I've been saying the word empathy up here, sort of in place of reading the room. But if it takes that reflection, that little bit of reflection, even while you're on stage, okay, is the audience with me, is often enough reflection to keep you moving forward with that audience. But if you're just, as you say, like blindly pushing through your set to get through it, which Bill didn't in that moment, um, you lose them. You're gone. You're a million miles away from that audience.
Yeah,
A bad show.
and also if something happens in the room, I mean, obviously heckling being best example, but sometimes like I don't know, a fight starts in the back, possibly a UK specific example, or somebody breaks a glass, or like a loud noise goes up, something falls down, um, and you don't have to make a big deal of it. You don't even have to be hilarious when you're addressing it. But I find that like if you just don't acknowledge that that's happening at all, it can also distance you from the audience because they're like, "Are you not in the room with us?"
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you, because like you are. And obviously, like, yeah, best case scenario, you say something hilarious, but also, I'm sure you will have found this as well. With MCing or crowd work, I would say that it's pretty easy in that like you can get a laugh without necessarily saying the best comedy gold sound joke. Um, you can get a laugh pretty easily, and that's because the joke, whatever you say, it works because everyone's in on the joke. We're all in the room and we're all invested and we're sharing this experience,
Yeah.
which is why like an MC can be like, "Oh, what do you do?" And somebody's like, "Oh, like I'm a marketing manager," and the MC is like, "Oh, wow," and that gets a laugh, even though like that's not funny. That's just like, oh, but it gets a laugh because we're all like sharing, and so I think, yeah, empathy is a good word for it. It's just it's engaging really.
Mm-hmm.
It's engaging with the audience. With you don't have to pander, but I think it goes a long way to just showing that you're present and you're taking them into account. Um, and I think that's really enough because like at the end of the day, I do it for me. I say stuff because I enjoy feeling smart when I say stuff. But it is a collaboration, right? Because I will do my best to like take them into account and like try and work with it.
Again, what it feels like to me is that the audience doesn't want to be made to feel like they're idiots. So if you're talking over their head, you've alienated them already. And they're sitting there with each other, looking at each other, not at you, because you've already separated yourself from them by talking over them, through them, around them, but not with them.
Yeah, and it's also it doesn't have to you don't have to overcomplicate it because it can you don't because different people are like some people are better on their feet and more adaptable and quicker with rebuttals than others. That's that shouldn't be preventing anybody from doing those battles. But it can be just as easy as laughing at your opponent's jokes and looking the audience in the eye and being like, yeah, I'm also here and I'm also part of this and I'm in on the jokes, and then you go on and do your thing. It doesn't have to be necessarily anything more complicated than that.
Yeah, I find a lot in roast battle when someone tries to bully their opponent and get the crowd on their side that way is when they lose the crowd.
Because I really think that winning rose battle shouldn't be the goal. The goal is the performance itself. The goal is selling your jokes to the audience and being in the performance, engaging with the opponent, the judges, the audience. You shouldn't be thinking about winning or losing. And a lot of my battles, like even like my like win-loss ratio is pretty tragic. I even mentioned this on the Patreon episode when I said to Pat, like, I hate that you know display it because, like, why would you want the record of the judges' regrettable decisions out there, And Pat said that apparently I'm like tied fourth for all-time battles within the league. I was like, yeah, like, what about the loss numbers? And he didn't tell me, but the ratio is pretty bad. But also, like, some probably most of the battles that I had featured on the podcast, I didn't win, but it doesn't matter because you want the whole battle to land, and like what the judges say afterwards and who they vote for, that's irrelevant. That doesn't actually, that's just what they vote. Like, obviously, you can react to it. For example, in Austin, I did a couple comments in response to the judges, um, which was fun. But the actual outcome is not part of the performance. It's just the outcome. It really doesn't matter.
Well, and really, if it's about getting your work seen, they cut out the judges on Roast Battle Weekly for the battles.
Yeah, yep, yep,
So in that way, you're right. Yeah, the judging does not matter at all if it's
exactly.
about being seen internationally. Uh, when if anybody watches a full episode, then certainly the judging is a part of the performance. But on the podcast, yeah, it's all they're seeing is your joke writing. All they're seeing is your delivery, your on stage presence for whatever. Every city's different for those
But
five
I
jokes.
mean,
Three
in
roasts
terms
are different.
of in terms of the judging being part of performance, it is because the judging has to maintain or raise the energy. So it should be either quick or funny enough to justify the length. But the outcome, like the name that they say at the end, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I agree with you. Um, to me, like I want to see both of those performers in the battle. I want to see their writing showcased. I want to see their performance, and I know, well, hopefully, I'm going to see them again. So whether they win or lose this time, whatever, there's going to be a next time. I'm going to see more of the writing. I'm going to get to experience them as a performer again.
And the best battles are where when both performers do really well and everything lands. And then, to be fair, like the next week, nobody remembers who who won the judge vote. Or sometimes it goes to the audience if it's a split vote. And to the point where like I was writing down like my record recently, because I haven't invoiced for like a year and a half, and I couldn't remember the outcome of some of my battles. I just remember like the whole battle and the vibe, and I had to confirm with my opponent, like, hey, do you remember like who won that one? And apparently, in both times, I actually won the battles that I was asking about, but I couldn't remember that because I just remembered the whole thing.
My record went sideways two battles in. I was in my second battle, and Pat had forgotten my record, so
I remember
he
that, yeah.
said I was 1-0 or something when I was 1-1. I just went with it. And then at the next event, at the one you were at, he's like, "What's your record?" And I went 1-0, but and I shouldn't have said anything. I should have kept my mouth shut because my record would have been 1-0. But I'm at that point, and
No,
I'm
no,
only
no.
three
I think
battles in.
I think the way you said it was pretty funny. You basically said like, oh, like technically 1-1, but that one doesn't matter or something like that. And like I think Pat just didn't catch on immediately on what he was saying, but I got what you were saying. I
Yeah,
think that was
no,
quite fun.
those Zoom battles are so frustrating sometimes for the cross communication and the delay. Uh,
But yeah, that's true. But I'll say this because this is my first time like joining one of those, and it was really fun to see how pretty much in every battle people made use of the format that it was in.
oh
Like,
yeah, yeah, we get
uh,
PowerPoint presentations at the Patreon battles. It's a whole different creature.
yeah, and I mean, I think, yeah, okay. So, shush. So, okay, the pub is closing.
All right.
Um, we can I can either call you back or we can keep chatting while I walk. But especially like if you have any questions that you feel like we haven't
Oh
got
man.
addressed.
Well, the name of the podcast is Roast Babble, and I like to keep it organic. We just sort of flow through it. It's fun. But we've been talking for I think 2.5 hours now. So if you're happy to, I'll ask you, do you have anything that you would like to plug, Helen K?
Um, I mean, not really. I guess my Instagram, it's Hell Hath No Fury, Hell with one L and it's underscores. I felt very clever when I came up with that because it's a play on the Shakespeare thing, and then I quickly realized it's a pain in the ass to dictate to somebody. But otherwise, I guess just to watch the Rose Battle League YouTube channel and the stuff they put on there. Just enjoy the game.
There you go. Thank you so much for coming on today, Helen, and have a great walk home. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you.
Thank you so much. Nice chatting to you. Have a good rest of the day.